welcome you. Thank you all for coming this evening. Medford for Mass started out of the campaign for Elizabeth Warren, where a bunch of Medford residents were very active on the Elizabeth Warren campaign and said, we have amazing momentum going. We worked directly with the campaign and did all the Medford organizing for Elizabeth Warren. And it was myself and my friends, Aaron and Ari, and unfortunately, Ari is now working in journalism, and so he does not do politics, and Aaron has moved to California. And we then segued into working on Ed Markey's campaign, and we brought in Gumby, who some of you may remember, who has moved to Jamaica Plain. So I am the last remaining person of the organizing crew from the first year. Many of you worked on that campaign with us. And back in those days, I was only working part-time, and it was a lot easier. But then we worked on Carl Shortino's campaign. We worked on the Raise Up Mass campaign. And then last year, Bob Fitzpatrick and Bruce Kulick agreed to help organize with me, and we started working on the city council and the mayor race, which we had always said we wanted to have an influence on. And we held Meet the Candidates nights for some of the progressive challengers of the city council and the mayor. And we asked them all to fill out surveys and tell us all about themselves, and some of the candidates did. And so some of the people who actually, Sharon and Bob hosted Meet the Candidates nights for the city council last year, and Karen hosted a Meet the Candidate for Mayor Burke, well, the candidate Burke at that time. And so this evening, Christy Avino organized this evening for us. And so Christy, you want to tell us? And I am going to keep time.
Hi, thank you all so much for coming this evening. I'm Christy Avino. I live in Fulton Heights here in Medford. And I think we've all seen just so much sort of positive activity in our state legislature over the last couple of years. Still a lot of work to be done, but this year we had some wonderful bills passed, including equal accommodation. We hopefully have equal pay coming before the end of the session. So I think it's been just sort of really incumbent upon all of us to take an interest in our elected representatives, and of course that's why you all are here tonight. So I'm so glad you came. I hope you'll take what you hear from the candidates and go out and talk with your neighbors and really advocate for our community. So thank you again so much for coming. So I have the pleasure to introduce our current Senator, Patricia Jehlen. She was first elected to the Massachusetts Senate in 2005. She represents the 2nd Middlesex District, which includes Medford, Somerville, Winchester, and Cambridge. She's the Assistant Vice Chair of the Senate Committee on Ways and Means, the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Elder Affairs, Vice Chair of the Committee on Education, and she served on the Joint Committee on Education and Housing. And Senator Jehlen and her family live in Somerville. So the Senator will have 20 minutes to speak with you all and take questions as well. Thank you.
Do you want me to give you a 5-minute warning or 10 minutes?
Give me 10 minutes, because I don't want to talk very much. I'd rather listen to you all. If I were teaching you, I would really want you to sit in a place where I could see you all at once. This is very distracting. I did bring my little flyers, which I will pass out. This is how I present myself. I've been Senator for Medford for 10 years. It was really, first I represented Ward 2 in Somerville for 16 years, and then I represented Somerville for 16 years, and then I had a chance to run for this seat, and meeting people in Medford and learning about your community has been so wonderful. I thought Somerville was a hive of activity and creativity, and then I found out Medford is too. And I've met so many people involved in so many different issues. I think that was the first thing I wanted to do, was establish relationships, find out who was here, who was doing things, what the streets were, how to get from one place to another. But I have felt really welcome here. I just had a great time visiting a little bit of Circle the Square. It's just amazing, all the things that I learned. I picked up some plants from the community gardens. I want to say that I always try to keep somebody from Medford in my office to keep me on track. Vicki Halal has been there with me for a long time. She works on education and elder affairs for me. Bob Fitzpatrick was my excellent chief of staff who recruited my next chief of staff, who immediately moved to Medford, Tim Snyder. Currently short on just Vicki right now. I wanted to thank my colleagues. I have a great set of colleagues in the House, Christine Barber and Paul Donato, the maximum leader almost of the House. And I really like working with them. So I want to say that my basic approach to representing people and being your senator is, my first job was being a community organizer, and I still sort of think of myself that way, that I don't think anybody does anything by themselves successfully in politics. This is why I'm not a great politician in some ways. I find it very difficult to say, I did this, I passed that bill, I got that appropriation. Paul knows I never do anything by myself, and neither does any of us. So, and wow, Councilor Balco and all that, very glad to see you. So I'm going to give 3 examples of what that has meant to me. One is the Mystic River. Actually, I have 2 examples for the Mystic River. When I was a representative, I formed the Mystic View Task Force to try to look at the Mystic River, which has always been so, well, until recently, had been so neglected, and look at the area at Assembly Square and say, is this a good place for big box retail and parking lots? Or is it a place where we could harvest some value for our city, which has a very low tax base, and give people access to this beautiful river? So that was the first thing I did, but when I came to Medford, I learned more and more about the Mystic River Watershed Association. We've been doing a lot of work with them. And we organized the Mystic River Caucus, of which Paul and I are sort of the leaders, I think, such as we are. But we've been very successful in getting money for two things. One is the Mystic River Master Plan, which sets the plan for how we're going to build access to the river and have a wonderful, inviting place. And then we got more money to take the next step on the Mystic River Master Plan, which right now is helping us plan or develop the access and beautiful. Has everybody seen the plans for McDonald Park? It's really gonna be a lot nicer. There's gonna be a lot fewer phragmites and a lot more visibility to the river. So I'm very excited about that. The same, if you've been across the river to Assembly Row and seen the new park there and all along the river here. Then the other thing we've been doing, well, actually 3 things. We've been getting money with Paul's help for the water chestnut cleanup, which is almost complete. A lot of it has been done by people in canoes pulling does everybody know what water chestnuts are? They are not delicious. This kind is not delicious. They've been pulling them out and putting them in baskets. So we've been able to get money for mechanical harvesters, and the water chestnuts are disappearing, but you gotta be constantly vigilant because they are very prolific. And the last thing is we've been working to try to stop the pollution of the Mystic River. We just got the report card last week, 2 weeks ago. This part of the river is now A-, which means that you can actually swim in it unless there has just been a storm recently. And the lakes are the same. You can swim in the lakes almost any day. But if there's been rain, don't go. But the rest of the watershed needs a lot of work. Alewife and Aberjona, which feed into the Mystic, are still quite polluted. That's only from bacteria, but we don't know all of the other kinds of contaminants. Anyway, that's been a very successful collaboration with the community organization and building support inside the legislature to get funding for the things that make the Mystic good.
It's about 10 minutes almost.
Well, then I'm not going to talk about anything else. I'm going to. I did want to give an example. See, I have two examples about education. How many people here care about education? Paulette? I don't know. Okay. I'm going to take a vote. I'm going to talk about charter schools or testing. Raise your hand for charter schools. If you want me to talk about charter schools, how many people want me to talk about testing? I'm saying testing. Okay. I hear from a lot of people around the state and in my community about how the idea that you can test kids all the time and find out, A, what they've learned, B, how good their teacher is, and C, how good their school is. There's enormous evidence that that is not the case, and that the standardized tests, if used for those purposes, basically measure social class. And so all of the schools that are targeted for intervention by the state are among the 5% that educate the poorest children. So that, it doesn't actually work, and it changes what happens in the classrooms. Across the state, people have eliminated many classes in art, music, social studies, reduced recess, reduced phys ed, extended the day, but having more. Math teacher told me yesterday, 5 weeks of prep for the MCAS. 5 weeks is 1/8 of the year. So that is not a time when they are learning new stuff or learning what's appropriate for their class. You're going to say something.
I am, if you'll allow me. It also means that there are no artists in residences anymore. There are no storytellers, musicians, poets. Just about nobody can come into the classroom because the teachers have to teach to that test, and they are being compared. One fourth grade teacher against another fourth grade teacher, one school against another school. And I even heard from a woman the other day who said that she was willing to come in and volunteer teaching Spanish, and they couldn't make a time for her to come at all.
Well, testimony. This is actually, there's statistics that show that this is actually true. Although after MCAS stops, many schools open up and start having projects, which is what happens in my granddaughter's school. I went to a charter school the other day. Right after Park, they started having project-based learning, which is how kids best learn, or at least many kids best learn. So we have not been successful in the legislature in getting the attention of getting onto the agenda to say we would reduce the pressure for high-stakes tests. So instead, because when we go around, we say, isn't this a good idea? And people say, yeah, you're right, but what are you going to do instead? We want to be able to measure kids, and we want to be able to measure schools. So other states have examples of how they do it by having kids do projects which are judged by a jury of outside evaluators. And for schools in Somerville, we've been doing surveys to find out about student engagement, teacher support, materials, resources, climate, how kids feel when they go to school. So that we have found, because I have relationships around the state, 9 districts are coming together, and they are going to be piloting examples of this. So that's why I say that I think being an organizer allows you to do things that if you were just trying to carry your agenda in a straightforward way, you can't always succeed. So we hope that by showing that you can do something different as they have in other states, that people will acknowledge and try to do a more humane and human kind of education and evaluation. So those are I just have 2 examples then. And if I will have more questions or audience participation. Everybody agrees that you have to start early, and that the achievement gap starts actually at birth, probably before. But that kids coming into kindergarten, I heard about a school in Holyoke, educating poor kids. Okay, you want to talk about anything about education? 27 kids in a classroom, no reading specialist, no librarian, no support staff, no aide, half of them not speaking English, many of them not knowing their letters or colors. That is not equal opportunity. Kids need to come in they need to start earlier to get in that. There is a wait list for early childhood education, which is 24,000 kids right now. That's at least as much as for charter schools. I would put my money there, and I would put my money into funding all schools equally. Right now, Massachusetts is among the 5 least equal states in school funding between, say, Cambridge and Holyoke. So kids in Cambridge have spent on them, I can't even name a number big enough probably, but I'm not there, so. It's the highest in the state, but it's compared to very poor districts, which are educating very poor children and don't have the resources to do it. I toured the state with the Foundation Budget Review Commission, and we heard terrible stories of textbooks older than the kids, of those 27 kids in a classroom, of schools with not enough computers to give the tests that they're required to give. So first, fund what you have. And then I think we need to make, in the Senate budget we did, we tied the expansion of charter schools to increasing funding for all schools. And we said, if the district wants it, they pay for it. If the district doesn't want it, then the state should pay for it. If the state is granting, many states, 13 states do that. The state grants the charter, the state pays for it. So I think that's a better plan. That's more than you wanted to know. Anyway, it's a very dangerous proposition. The Senate Ways and Means Committee estimates that it would cost $100 million over the next 7 years. That's a fair amount of money. We could spend it a lot better. Nobody wants to talk about anything but schools? I don't care about anything but schools and old people.
She had a question.
Yes.
Well, I don't think it would work in like 1 minute, but I was going to ask both candidates, can you tell me about your disability platform? What initiatives are you doing that benefit that help reduce inequities for people with disabilities?
Well, some of my first bills were, one of the first bills I passed was the Braille bill, which says that kids who are blind should be taught Braille. I have worked for many years to get deaf kids a chance to be taught by people who were certified in ASL, and that's now required in Massachusetts schools. I do a lot on work because I'm the chair of Elder Affairs. A lot of those issues are related. Just today, we passed in the Senate a bill to create a commission so that would try to make sure that every new residential construction in the state has visitability, which means you can get in on the ground floor with no step, that you have a wide enough doorway, and you have an accessible bathroom on the first floor. That's coming off the top of my head. Do you remember anything? People with mental illness. I have worked a lot on, for example, when I was in the House, we passed the bill that I filed to require hospitals that serve mentally ill people to let them outdoors once a day.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's the new one. The old one was...
Fresh air.
No, that's fresh air. That was just 2 or 3 years ago. But in the House, it was the 5 fundamental rights, which included the right to talk to your doctor, to your attorney, the right to receive and send mail, the right to make phone calls and receive phone calls. You seem like you know these things. Why don't you tell me what the other 2 rights were? I can't remember.
No, but I'm convinced about that.
She's been doing it.
Yeah, no, and I knew that, but I have to ask,
Well, then
both
tell me.
candidates, right?
And that's the last question, and that's time.
Okay.
So yes, so we actually started 2 minutes late, so we're ending 2 minutes late, so it's 7:42.
Oh my God.
So that you've got 20 minutes exactly. We really appreciate, we really thank you for coming.
Thank you all so much.
All right, and thank you. And I know Christy has Leland in the hall, and so they're going to come in a minute. Just so for a few latecomers, we specifically wanted it to not be set up as a debate so that nobody had the temptation to be responding to each other rather than independent conversations with each candidate.
Can we ask the same question?
You are absolutely welcome to ask the same questions.
I now have the pleasure to introduce Councilor Leland Cheung, who was first elected to the Cambridge City Council in 2010. He's also served on the board of the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative, to which he was appointed by Governor Patrick, and he recently also served as a board member to Youth City. Councilor Cheung and his family live in Cambridge. So as with our first candidate, Councilor Cheung will have 20 minutes to speak with you all and take questions, and Alicia, if you would give them a 10-minute warning, that would be wonderful. So thank you, Councilor Cheung.
I want to thank you all for coming here and taking your time. I really, really appreciate it. I know there's probably some of you in the audience who are wondering why I would, dare run against somebody who's dedicated her life to public service, who's, I think has a really respected and long career, who's been in office, I think, longer than I've been alive, and not understand the history that, in Massachusetts, no one has ever successfully challenged a sitting state Democratic senator. But history is actually why my wife and I love living here. It's amazing. We have access to the arts. We have a community that is so tight-knit, and we're a region that's literally inventing the future, both technologically and culturally. But walking around, you can feel the sense of history all around you, dating back, to the 1600s, when Medford was, just a bunch of farmers who were coming together because they didn't want to go all the way to Charlestown to come together in a town hall that they built and decide how to, spend the shared resources that they pulled together, trying to build a better life. It's over the years this region has, we fought the revolution, we penned our democracy, but somehow along the way with super PACs and super Tuesdays and super delegates, democracy kind of got complicated. And we went from being a beacon of hope for abolitionists and for people trying to expand civil rights, and a beacon of freedom for people across the world who came here for education and took our values back home, to now having Beacon Hill be the home of the greatest income inequality in the country. And the United States having more income inequality than ever before in our entire history. And that income inequality is affecting everything, from housing and transportation to education, and you can see it walking around. So, I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and we've been looking at pre-K schools, and when I go into an open house to learn about the school, and I hear parents listen to the pitch, and first questions, when's drop-off, when's pickup, how much does it cost? And it's, the 9 a.m. drop-off, a 1 p.m. pickup for $40,000 a year. I hear this deep sense of despair that, you're trying to make ends meet and realizing that you can't. And I was knocking doors in West Medford, and I met a couple. One of them works at Biogen, the other one works at Google in Cambridge, and they wanted to live close to work to be able to walk there, but this was the closest they could live, the closest they could afford to buy a place. And I hear their despair that the game is rigged, and if they can barely afford it, who possibly can? And then I talked to their neighbor, next door, who, this is one of the oldest African-American communities in the country, all African-American neighborhoods, and he's wondering, where all his friends went, and wondering if he should sell his house to pay for his grandkids' college, and wondering how an honest lifetime of work for the MBTA can somehow be worth less than the place that he bought to store all of his stuff. This income inequality, I think, is affecting everything we have here in Massachusetts, and it's my focus and the reason I'm running for state senate. And it's supposedly the most liberal, progressive state in the country. We've kept all of those people waiting for solutions. We've kept them all waiting for us to deal with the issues that they're going to bed at night worrying about, staying up worrying about. And as one of the wealthiest states in the country, which Massachusetts is, if we can't fix their problems, if we can't give people a leg up, if we're so focused on where we're going that we forget about the people climbing the ladder behind us, I don't know who in the state can, in the country can. If we can't fix it here, I don't think anyone else has a shot. And that's why I think we need to get back to the roots of democracy. When we were just a collection of people, fresh off the boat, coming together, trusting each other, valuing each other, investing in each other in our communities. And when my father first immigrated in 1969, he was living in Harvard Square, going to school at Boston University. walking through each day, he was absolutely amazed by the civil activism, the civic activism, the social consciousness that was engaging and expanding, people fighting for social and civil rights. He wanted to make sure that he instilled in me and my sister the same awe that he felt for his adopted home. And so he took us every few years back to visit relatives who were still living in China. And that's where I learned that my cousins there can't just run for office because they think that they have an idea on how to do things differently. They can't write an op-ed criticizing the government without risking reprisal on themselves or their family. They can't do what we're all doing here today, gathering, participating in the process, thinking for ourselves instead of just having to accept the only choice on the ballot, the status quo. And that's why, my father wanted to show me by being able to compare my life to my lives my cousins were living, that he didn't just give me responsibility, he didn't just give me opportunity, he gave me responsibility. Democracy is an opportunity, but we have a responsibility to partake in it. Because if people don't show up, if the people don't participate, you can't have a government for the people, by the people. It's we the people who need to have a real choice and need to choose to get involved. And that's why I first ran for the city council back in 2009 and started in 2010. I was working I left my career, I was an entrepreneur and an investor, and wanted to make sure that the innovation economy that I was working in Kendall Square, that we just weren't working for it, that it was working for us, that it was working for the community, that it was accessible to everyone who lived in our city, that we were making sure that we were giving the education, the resources, the tools that we needed to grow our own workforce. And so over the years in the innovation economy, we've fought back. We've made sure that we're bringing in not just a minimum wage, but a living wage. We've supported local businesses. We've made sure that as companies are coming in, they're providing job training. I've led on environmental sustainability. I was the chair of the Environment Committee. I used to work at the Department of Energy. And in Cambridge, we've introduced composting, single-stream recycling, solar panels, net zero. And then also, we fought to increase affordable housing with inclusionary and incentive zoning, making sure that we're providing a pathway for people that want to stay in our community. We fought for universal pre-K, for STEM, computer science education in our classrooms, affordable post-secondary, community colleges that actually get people into a job instead of just into debt. And we've led initiatives that have made our government more transparent and honest. I brought in open data, participatory budgeting. We brought our entire tax base, $600 million, from an overseas bank back to a local community bank that's actually here in Medford. And on the council, all of those things, I've been successful by working with the community, but swinging for the fences. I haven't been afraid to challenge the status quo. I haven't been afraid to try and push for better constantly and incessantly. But I've also realized that there's a limit to what any one city, whether it's Cambridge or Medford or Somerville or Winchester, can accomplish on its own. We need, desperately, state legislation to come in and help us tackle our biggest challenges. And if we're to deal with the changes that are coming with the economy, with technology, we need leadership that understands the future, but also values the past. Because the challenges of the next generation are very different from the ones we faced yesterday. How will the gig economy change how work works? How will self-driving cars affect traffic? How will robotization affect service jobs? In my prior career as an entrepreneur, I was responsible for thinking about the future. And now as a father, I'm responsible for thinking about my daughter's future. And I think, as every parent knows, becoming a parent kind of changes your brain chemistry. I don't know what it is. There's a PhD, there's like thesis just waiting to happen on this. But all of a sudden, it seems like more fun to go home, instead of going out with friends, to go home and read the same book for the 100th time. The first time that you hold your daughter, your child, the first time that they take a step, the first time you drop them to school, there's like this overwhelming sense of responsibility and urgency to just give them everything. You want to provide for them. There's this need to get it right now. Because no matter how hard that you hold on to a moment, it's gone like that. And that's how too many people feel about everything in life. Will the tea be on time, or am I going to lose my job? Is rent going to go up, or am I going to have to move? Should I sell my house to pay for my kids' college? Do I have to get another job, or should I spend more time with my kids? people go to bed at night with this sense of anxiety and overwhelming forces that are pushing down on them that they should really only feel about parenthood. And I think that that's how every legislator should feel about every challenge that we face as a community. You know, it's not enough to be progressive. I am progressive. I'm one of the most progressive members of the Cambridge City Council. But it's not enough. You need to make progress. We need to make progress for the people who are suffering right now and don't have time to get engaged, to get involved, to fight for a better future. We need to have someone who understands the challenges that our kids face so that they won't have to face them tomorrow. And that's why I'm running for state senate, to refocus Beacon Hill on the million daily struggles that people go to bed worrying about every night. And I think that we need to be more ambitious. We need to be more opportunistic. We need to be more aggressive in making change a reality. And there's more innovation and change and stuff happening in this district than pretty much any other Senate district across the entire country. And we need elected leadership who understands the future, who values the past, but who thinks about how we make sure that that future works for all of us who are here now and works for our kids tomorrow. And I know that the incumbent and I share a lot of the same values, but my focus is that income inequality, the problem that's driving, frankly, everything else. And I love serving my community. It's been incredible serving in Cambridge. I was a city councilor for the last 6 years, the town that my father first called home when he immigrated. But as a father now, I got to tell you, I love my daughter more. So I'm not a career politician. I don't want to be here forever. I'm looking forward to the day when I can get back to my most important job, which is fatherhood. But I think about this a lot, and I think that might be like a selfish motivation to get in the race right now. But I think that's what makes us Democrats. I think what makes us progressive Democrats is the realization that it's not just about giving everything we can to our own kids. It's about the world that we're leaving for them. It's about the realization that if we help every child, we're helping our own. And that's why I'm in this race, but I've heard it countless times since I've announced, whatever you do, don't challenge the status quo. Democracy is great, but not in a Democratic primary. Do not challenge the incumbent. And people have said, wait your turn. Well, people who are waiting for the T, who are waiting for pre-K, who are waiting for a school that works, who are waiting for get access to the jobs that we're bringing in, they're tired of it. And I'm tired of waiting to get in there and do what I know needs to be done. And people have said, oh, you're too opportunistic, you're ambitious. Well, I am ambitious about the opportunities that I think that we have to make life better. What if we were the first state that had universal pre-K? What if we made post-secondary education affordable by taxing some of these multi-billion-dollar endowments that are no longer schools, they're hedge funds? What if we had a regional housing plan that coordinated cities and had us building affordable housing instead of having cities fight against one another? What if we required the contractors who are building the Green Line extension, by the way, some of them are the same ones that built the Big Dig and wasted a ton of our money, what if we required them to have the same open checkbook that we, the state, provide for residents? I have a habit of swinging for the fences. That's what I'm doing right now by entering this race. But if you invest your vote in me, I'll make sure that the Commonwealth invests its resources in us, and I'll swing for the fences for you. And that's why I'm asking for your support this September 8th. And I would love some questions. Thank you very much. Don't be shy.
So far, what you've said is that your background is in industry and investment and in capitalism. The incumbent's background is in education and community organizing. Outside of that, how would you differentiate yourself from the incumbent? Because what I have heard you say is really not anything different than what I would hear her say.
Yeah. So I'm an entrepreneur. I was part of a company, startup after college, and when I first ran for the city council in Cambridge, actually, I decided to go back to get an MBA and a degree in political administration from the Kennedy School because I wanted to do clean tech. And I've been a big environmentalist and wanted to invest in technology that was reshaping how we reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, reduce our carbon emissions. And my first year at the Kennedy School, I emailed all the incumbents because the city council race was just big enough to volunteer for the campaign, because I was like, I'm at the Kennedy School, I should learn how campaigns work. It was a great opportunity, and no one responded. And so I was like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm gonna run myself and learn that way. And I took that same experience, my experience with industry, with starting companies, and I brought that in to the city council. You know, participatory budgeting didn't just happen because I wrote some legislation and had an idea. I had to work with our finance staff. I brought in the mayor from Lisbon to come and talk about how I was working there. I went through in detail with the managers who were responsible for line item budgets. I went through with our community people to talk about how we're going to implement it. I did what an entrepreneur does, was I had an idea and I didn't just float it and ask other people to do it. I went down and made sure that I got it done myself. Same thing when I brought our entire tax base back from overseas. Same thing when I stood up for expanding pre-K as opposed to just studying it year after year after year after year. Let's just start and get things done and make progress for people as opposed to waiting for the perfect solution. And I think that's the mindset that I bring into the job with me. I think the incumbent and I share a lot of the same values. I didn't run because I dislike her. I didn't run because of anything. I ran because I think that I have some skills and some knowledge and some background to offer to take what I've done at City Council, understanding how cities are struggling, how our residents are struggling right now, and bring that into legislation that the state can implement, and I want to submit some day one to try and help us provide for people. I think that's the difference. I'm coming in with an urgency that's not, I understand every politician feels urgency. I've got a real urgency in that, my wife would love me to get back to a job where I'm working, I'm not at community meetings every night at 8 o'clock. I'm at home having put my daughter to bed. And there's a day going to come pretty soon when my primary job is going to be chauffeuring her to Little League games and making sure that she becomes the first female Red Sox player. But I have a personal sense of urgency, but I want to make as big of a mark as I can before that happens. And it's not enough for me to just try and give my daughter things. I want to make sure that this home that we're building for her doesn't have the growing income inequality that we're experiencing right now, is a place where all of our students, all of our peers in their class, regardless of their background, their income, their family situation, have opportunities and are learners, and that it's diverse, and it's not, becoming, as it is, so much. We have the largest achievement gap in the country. I don't want my daughter to grow up in that. So I want to make some change now, so that she doesn't have to experience it growing up. And I think you were next, and then.
Can you tell us about your disability platform and what sorts of initiatives you have that particularly impact the disability community?
Yeah. So I think I'll tell you that as someone, I'm blessed to be healthy and not have kind of healthy, but I would never presume to know the challenges that people who are dealing with disabilities face in the daily day, which is why I put my cell phone on all my literature, I put my cell phone on my website. I love when people call me if they're not a telemarketer. But at Cambridge we've done a bunch of things. We've done the ADA, we've done ADA ramps, we've leveled out sidewalks. I brought in changing the font size on the website to make sure that people could read it if they had issues with sight. I think that we need to make sure that our city is accessible, that our community is accessible, that we have access to participating freely and fully in government just like anyone else does. But just like somebody who's not me would never understand what it's like to grow up as a half Asian American in the middle of the country in the Midwest. I can never fully understand what people go through. So that's why I knock every door. I knock doors every election, regardless of whether or not I think I'm safe or not. I go out and I put my stuff out there because I want people to tell me what they need, and I want to engage people and get it done. But I fought every time somebody's come to me with an issue. I fought to make it happen, and I've proactively reached out to people. So I think that I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know what's going to come up in the future. I know that we have the oldest streets and sidewalks, and we have a government that's really slow to adopt the measures that private companies are doing to make sure that they're accessible. I think there's a lot more that needs to be done, but I'm never going to claim to know it all myself. I'm going to rely on members of our community for that and for everything that I do. Yeah.
One more minute, so one more question.
So Pat has years and years and years of doing the right thing for us and incredible investment in the environment, education, elder affairs. I could go on and on. What is it about you that is special enough or different enough? how could you possibly do as well as she is doing in your first 3 or 4 years?
So, I will tell you, I think I share a lot of the same values as Senator Jehlen. We probably vote 99% the same way. The difference is that I've never met anyone who works as hard as I do. And I'm willing to work day and night tirelessly to try and drive things forward. It's just honesty.
Well,
you asked me to tell
stories to your children.
Yeah, no, it's a juggling act, and it comes at the expense of sleep and lunch and dinner. But I think that the difference is, you know, we were asked our priorities at a debate a couple weeks ago, and she mentioned that she listed off education and elder affairs and criminal justice reform. And I agree with all those things. What I want to fight for, I think, our most pressing issue is income inequality. I think that is what it is driving everything else. It's what's forcing people out of homes. It's what is making people not have, you know, we have the highest achievement gap. We have an education system that is not delivering the needs for students. You know, the T, we should have done that thing 25 years ago when we first talked about it. We should have done it 12 years ago when we second talked about it. No legislator can tell you how much it's going to cost, and yet no one is called for legislative oversight of the MBTA. No one has called to hold contractors at risk that if you waste a bunch of our money on the big dig, you know what, you can't bid again on the Green Line extension. No one's asked them to open up their checkbook and make sure that they're showing us how much profit they're making off of our backs at the same time that they're cutting services and cutting station and cutting ADA accessibility and going in and cutting services, what they've shown with the night transport from minorities and low-income people. I have an urgency and a passion that's driven by the fact that I want to get those core things done for people. And when you talk about senior issues, a lot of it's due to the fact that, you know what, it's complicated by the fact that we no longer have our kids able to live near us. That we no longer we have housing that is forcing people out. The prices are skyrocketing. That we don't have accessible public transportation. That income inequality is driving everything. And I think we need to get at the root of that. And the fact that I come, as the gentleman asked earlier, from the private sector, means that I understand that world. I'm not of that world. I'm fighting to make it work for the rest of us. Because I think that Massachusetts can't compete. I don't want us to be a place that competes on low wages. I don't want us to be a place that competes based on giving tax breaks to large companies to move in their headquarters into Boston. I want us to compete on having the best infrastructure. I want us to compete on having the best pool of people that they don't need to bring in people from outside, that they have it right here. That all of our residents are prepared, have the best education in the country, and are ready for whatever jobs might want to be located here or might grow here. That's how I think Massachusetts competes, and that's how I think that we build a future for our children, where they're not in this race to the bottom, but that they're, I think, have the time and the luxury and have everything that we want and that we're currently struggling to understand, you know, why this income inequality we used to be able to build these big things. We built the first subway, we built the first library, we built the first public school, and now it's too expensive? How does that work? And I think it works because we have this massive income inequality and we're redistributing wealth to the wealthiest, and that is causing all these problems that we no longer have the money to invest in things because it's hidden in offshore bank accounts. So my passion on that issue, my focus on that issue, my understanding of how to hold the private sector to account is what I bring that's different.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your time. We'll leave some, should we leave some flyers in the back?
You are welcome to leave flyers.
Some flyers in the back, and I do actually have my personal cell phone. I can't change it, otherwise my wife wouldn't be able to find me, and then I would really be divorced. And I also have my email on there, so we'd love to hear from any of you. We'd love your support. We'd really appreciate your listening, your attention, and your keeping an open mind. Thanks.
Thank you very much.